Hey guys, tonight we begin with a story so strange and mysterious. You might think you've stepped into a medieval fever dream. Picture this, a cold, shadowy chamber, somewhere in Europe in the 1400s. The walls are rough stone, flickering candlelight, casting dancing shadows, and the air thick with the sharp scent of dried herbs, wormwood, lavender, maybe a hint of something a bit darker you can't quite place. In the corner, an old astrologer hunched over a cluttered wooden table, eyes darting between faded star charts, dusty scrolls, and the flickering flames. His quill scratches nervously as he murmurs incantations, calculating the positions of distant stars with trembling fingers. You might wonder, how could the stars' cold, distant pinpricks of light hold sway over something so personal as whether a couple could have children? Why did medieval people, from desperate peasants to powerful kings, place their hopes and fears into the hands of these cosmic seers? The answer lies in a world where superstition, religion, and early science collided in ways that shaped entire societies. In medieval Europe, horoscopes were no mere entertainment. They were lifelines. A royal family's future, a woman's chance at motherhood, even the fate of entire kingdoms, hinged on the alignment of planets and stars. Imagine the pressure. The queen must conceive an heir, but barren wombs were blamed on celestial displeasure. The astrologers' charts were consulted, the stars interpreted, and sometimes rituals performed, all in hopes of swaying fate itself. But here's the catch. The truth about medieval horoscopes and fertility is far stranger and darker than you might think. Beneath the scholarly charts and whispered prayers lay secrets hidden from most secret societies of astrologers wielding forbidden knowledge. Underground fertility rituals, blending astrology with herbal magic, and power struggles fought not just on battlefields, but in the heavens. Picture a secret ceremony under a crescent moon, where hopeful women gathered in a hidden grove, clutching mysterious herbs, led by a star reader who timed the ritual to cosmic alignments. This wasn't superstition. Alone it was desperation and hope, tangled with a dash of fear. Because meddling with fate wasn't without consequences. The church condemned such rituals as heresy, and those caught practicing them faced exile or worse. Yet the yearning for children made risk worth taking. And here's the kicker. These practices didn't just affect individuals. They shaped politics, marriages, and alliances. Astrologers could sway kings, dictate marriage partners, and even curse rivals with barren futures through dark star magic. The stars were both weapon and shield. So why did people trust these celestial charts so deeply? What happened when a royal heir was born under unlucky stars? And what were the true costs of these secret fertility rites? You're about to find out. But remember, once you peek behind the curtain of medieval horoscopes and fertility, there's no turning back. The story only grows stranger from here, with secrets darker and more shocking than you ever imagined. In the next section, we'll meet the astrologers themselves, those shadowy figures who didn't just read stars, but tried to command destiny, risking everything to control the fate of kingdoms and wombs alike. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. The stars have many secrets, and tonight, we start uncovering them. The medieval astrologers were far more than simple stargazers. They were power brokers, secret advisors, and sometimes even shadowy manipulators, controlling the fate of kings and peasants alike. Picture them slipping through castle corridors, under cover of night, clutching ancient scrolls filled with cryptic charts and planetary alignments. Their influence wasn't just about predicting the future. It was about trying to command it. In a world where medicine was rudimentary and often ineffective, astrology was treated as a precise science. Every decision, from when to plant crops to when a queen should conceive, hinged on the movements of the heavens. Royal astrologers calculated exact moments when the stars supposedly favored fertility, and their word could dictate the timing of conception itself. But their work was dangerous. The church condemned astrology, especially when it crossed into fertility rituals and secret ceremonies. Many astrologers had to hide their true knowledge to avoid persecution by inquisitors and religious authorities. Yet, despite the risks, demand for their services remained high. Imagine the tension in a royal chamber, where the queen remains childless. The king's advisors would pressure the astrologer to find a solution, some cosmic loophole to secure an heir. Failure was more than personal. It was political catastrophe. The influence of astrologers extended beyond royalty. In villages and towns, secret groups of astrologers and herbalists practiced hidden fertility rites. They combined star knowledge with herbal magic to create remedies and rituals away from church scrutiny. One ritual, held at midnight beneath a crescent moon, involved women drinking special herbal brews timed to cosmic alignments. It was a mixture of science, superstition, and desperate hope. Dark whispers told of astrologers who cursed rivals with infertility through secret star magic, turning fertility into a weapon of power and revenge. While today horoscopes might seem like harmless fun, in medieval times they were crucial threads in the fabric of life, death, and power struggles. Coming up next, a forbidden fertility ritual, blending astrology and early medicines, so strange and dangerous, it was banned by the church and feared by all who knew of it. Now, imagine for a moment that you are one of those desperate women living in a small medieval village. Maybe you've been married for years, praying for a child that never comes. You've tried everything. Your neighbors swear, buy herbs, prayers, blessings from the local priest, but still, your womb remains silent. What would you do if you heard of a secret ritual, whispered only in hushed tones, that promised to unlock fertility with the help of the stars themselves? This was no ordinary superstition. It was a forbidden ceremony. One so shrouded in secrecy and suspicion that participating meant risking not only social shame, but the wrath of the church. Yet, for countless women, the lure was too strong to resist. The ritual was to be held at midnight under the light of a crescent moon, the time when the stars aligned just right to supposedly open the gates of fertility. It took place deep in a forest clearing, far from the watchful eyes of village elders and church officials. Only those trusted in the secret gathered there, clutching bundles of herbs and talismans said to be infused with cosmic energy. At the center of this gathering stood the ritual leader, often an astrologer or a woman versed in herbal medicine and secret star knowledge. She would read the sky with practiced eyes, interpreting the positions of the planets and stars to determine the precise moment to begin the ceremony. Her voice was low but confident as she instructed the participants on the ancient rites, which combined recitations, symbolic gestures, and the use of strange concoctions made from roots, flowers, and minerals. One key ingredient was the so-called lunar bloom, a rare flower that only blossomed during the crescent moon phase. Its petals were crushed into a bitter brew, consumed by the women seeking fertility. The belief was that this flower held the power to align the woman's body with the celestial forces, awakening dormant powers within. Alongside the herbal potion, the ritual included chanting invocations to the stars, calls for the blessing of Venus, the planet of love and fertility, and sometimes the lighting of special candles, made from beeswax and infused with resin from sacred trees. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, fear, and hope. Now you might be thinking, this sounds like a harmless folk remedy. But the reality was far more intense. The ritual was often performed in secrecy, precisely because the church condemned such practices as witchcraft and heresy. Anyone caught participating risked severe punishment, ranging from public shaming to imprisonment, or worse. What's fascinating and chilling is that this ceremony wasn't just a quaint superstition. There are records of such rites being carried out across Europe, in places as varied as England, France, and Italy. In some cases, chroniclers even hinted that noblewomen engaged in similar secret fertility rites, far from the prying eyes of their husbands and courts. But why such secrecy? Because fertility was never just a personal matter. In the medieval world, the ability to conceive and bear children, especially sons, was a political and economic necessity. For nobles, heirs meant continuity of family lines and power. For peasants, children meant labor and survival. No wonder people were willing to defy church doctrine and social norms to grasp at any chance of fertility. What made these rituals even more intriguing was the strange mix of astrology and early medicine they employed. Medical knowledge back then was primitive and often intertwined with mysticism. Herbs like mugwort, fennel, and rue were believed to have specific effects on the female body, and when combined with the right timing based on the stars, were thought to maximize their power. One infamous example involved the use of mandrake root, a plant steeped in myth and fear. Mandrake's human-shaped roots and rumored magical properties made it a staple in fertility charms. The root was sometimes buried beneath a woman's bed or ground into powders to be consumed. Some believed it could stimulate conception, while others feared its magical side effects. The ritual also reflected the medieval understanding of the human body and reproduction, which was a blend of observation, guesswork, and spiritual belief. People believed that the alignment of the stars influenced bodily humors and vital forces, and that timing intercourse with specific celestial events could tip the scales in favor of fertility. But all this wasn't without risk. Some women reportedly fell ill after these ceremonies, whether due to toxic herbal concoctions, infection, or psychological stress is unclear. Others vanished mysteriously, rumored to have been accused of witchcraft and punished by local authorities. And yet, despite the danger, these rites continued, passed down in secret from generation to generation. They represented the desperate hope of women marginalized in a society that often blamed them alone for childlessness. Ignoring the many causes of infertility, it's also worth noting that these fertility rituals were often entwined with the beliefs about the moon and its phases. The crescent moon, in particular, was considered a powerful symbol of fertility and renewal. The waxing crescent, when the moon was growing toward fullness, was thought to be the best time to conceive, aligning a woman's body with the natural rhythms of growth and life. Even some medieval medical texts hinted at these connections, though often couched in cryptic language to avoid church censure. Doctors and healers recommended timing certain treatments and behaviors with the lunar calendar, believing this could enhance success. Now, here's a twist you probably didn't expect. While these practices were mostly about fertility, they sometimes veered into what we'd now call early reproductive technology, albeit crude and mystical. Some women used animal parts, bizarre potions, or charms thought to invoke spirits or celestial beings. The line between medicine, magic, and religion was blurred to the point of invisibility. So what does all this mean for us today? It means that our ancestors lived in a world where the cosmos was not just distant and cold, but intimately tied to their bodies, their futures, and their very survival. The stars were seen as both guides and gatekeepers, their influence shaping personal destinies and entire societies. But here's the catch. Much of this secret knowledge was deliberately suppressed or destroyed by the church and later scientific authorities, labeling it as superstition or witchcraft. The stories and rituals survived only in fragments, whispered in hidden corners or recorded in obscure manuscripts. And that leaves us with a tantalizing mystery. How many of these ancient rites truly worked? And what price was paid for their power? Did the alignment of stars really sway fertility, or was it the unshakable belief in them that made the difference? Could some of these forbidden practices have laid the groundwork for later developments in reproductive medicine? We'll keep peeling back the layers. Next, we're going to uncover the stories of those who crossed the line between hope and horror, people who sought to cheat fate with these rituals, and what happened when things went terribly wrong. Trust me, the darkest secrets of medieval fertility magic are just around the corner, and they are not for the faint of heart. Now, picture yourself standing at the edge of one of those ancient forests, the night thick with mist and mystery. You're about to step into the very heart of the forbidden fertility ritual, a secret world where desperation, superstition, and dark magic collide. What you're about to learn will shake your understanding of medieval life, revealing a reality stranger and more unsettling than you ever imagined. The ritual began long before midnight. With careful preparation, women and men who dared participate would fast, cleanse, and purify themselves, believing that only a body and soul, free from impurity, could truly align with the stars. They'd wear special garments, sometimes embroidered with celestial symbols, or carry talismans crafted by secret hands. Every detail mattered, because they believed the cosmos was watching, and even the smallest mistake could doom the effort. At the center of the clearing was a stone altar, worn smooth by years of secret ceremonies. Candles flickered around it, casting eerie shadows as the ritual leader raised her hands to the heavens. The astrologer's voice, low and steady, began to chant the names of planets, stars, and ancient spirits, calling on them to bless the fertile union about to come. But this wasn't just a spiritual plea. It was also a calculated act of timing. The astrologer had spent weeks observing the heavens, noting the positions of Venus, the goddess of love and fertility, Jupiter, bringer of luck, and the moon itself. The exact moment chosen was said to be the cosmic sweet spot when energies converged, perfectly to open the womb and spark new life. Here's where things get dark. Some versions of this ritual included acts that would make even the most open-minded cringe today. For instance, there are whispered accounts of animal sacrifices, often a white lamb or dove, intended to appease celestial forces. The blood was believed to hold potent magic, sometimes smeared on the body or altar as a symbol of life's sacred flow. Other accounts speak of the use of intoxicating herbs and substances designed to alter consciousness, like henbane or mandrake, to help participants transcend the physical world and commune with the stars directly. These substances, while believed to open spiritual channels, were also dangerous, causing hallucinations, poisoning, or worse. Then there's the taboo of physical intimacy woven into the ritual. Unlike modern ideas of privacy and consent, these ceremonies sometimes involved public or semi-public acts believed necessary to seal the blessing. Imagine the clash between the desperate hope for children and the rigid, often brutal social norms surrounding sex in medieval society. The Church's condemnation of such rituals was fierce and relentless. To the clergy, these practices were not only heretical but dangerous, threatening to undermine the divine order. Priests and inquisitors hunted down suspected practitioners with zeal, leading to trials, punishments, and executions. Women accused of fertility magic often faced the harshest fates, burned at the stake, imprisoned, or ostracized forever. But despite this, the rituals persisted. People clung to them out of hope, fear, and a deep need to control the uncontrollable. Fertility was life, and life was everything. Without children to carry on family names and labor on lands, futures crumbled. You might be surprised to learn that some of these secret ceremonies found their way into the royal courts. Queens desperate to produce heirs reportedly engaged in discreet fertility rites, guided by astrologers and women who knew the hidden arts. Even kings were rumored to consult forbidden texts to time their unions with their queens. The stakes couldn't have been higher. A barren queen meant no heir, no succession, and often political chaos or war. The power of these rituals stretched far beyond the private they-shaped kingdoms. And yet, the ritual's shadow also brought scandal. Tales circulated of women driven mad by the rituals, or of miscarriages blamed on curses laid by rival astrologers. Rumors of secret lovers, poisonings, and betrayals swirled in the courts and villages alike. So, what exactly were these rituals trying to harness? At their core, they were an attempt to bridge the human and cosmic, to tap into forces beyond mortal reach and bend them toward the miracle of life. They were a blend of hope, fear, and ancient knowledge, a desperate grasp at control in a chaotic world. As you digest this, consider how much of modern fertility science owes a hidden debt to these early attempts. The desire to understand and influence reproduction is ancient, wrapped in layers of mystery and magic. But beware, the deeper you go, the more tangled the story becomes. Next, we'll uncover the shocking tales of astrologers who weren't content to predict or guide fate but sought to manipulate it for personal gain. Their ambition and dark deeds changed lives, and sometimes ended them. You're on the edge of a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew about medieval horoscopes, fertility, and the dangerous dance between them. Ready to go further, because the next chapter is where things take a truly dark turn. Now, let's peel back the veil even further and dive into the lives of the astrologers who walked a razor's edge between revered advisors and shadowy manipulators. These were not mere interpreters of star charts, but often ambitious power players, weaving fertility magic into a web of political intrigue, personal gain, and, sometimes, deadly deception. Imagine an astrologer, let's call him Master Alaric, working in the court of a restless king. Alaric's job was to ensure the birth of an heir, to read the stars and find that perfect cosmic moment when conception would be blessed. But the stakes were more than royal lineage. They were life and death, fortunes and betrayals. Master Alaric was no stranger to secrets. He knew that the power to predict fertility was also the power to manipulate it. If he favored one noble family over another, or if he whispered dark predictions at just the right time, alliances could shift overnight. His star charts were weapons, his rituals, tools of influence. Some astrologers were rumored to have crossed even darker lines, using forbidden knowledge not just to guide fertility but to curse it. Imagine the fear among noble families that a rival astrologer's curse might doom their line to barrenness, wiping out generations in a blink. Such curses were said to be cast through secret star charts, whispered spells, and rituals performed. In the dead of night, this wasn't just superstition. Some historians believe these curses had real political weight. A childless noble was a vulnerable one, ripe for usurpation or scandal. The fear alone could drive enemies to desperate measures, but it wasn't all manipulation and magic. Many astrologers walked a tightrope, genuinely believing they were helping families secure their futures, blending faith, science, and hope in an uncertain world. Take, for example, the story of Lady Isolda, a noblewoman barren for years, who turned to her court astrologer with desperation. Through complex charts and secret rituals, the astrologer advised precise timings for intimacy, herbal treatments, and even symbolic ceremonies designed to invoke Venus's favor. Months later, a son was born, fueling legends of the astrologer's mystical powers. Yet, even success stories were laced with tragedy. The pressures on queens and noblewomen were immense. Failure often meant disgrace, exile, or worse. And sometimes, the astrologers themselves became scapegoats when heirs failed to materialize. Behind closed doors, some astrologers sold their services not just for gold, but for influence, demanding favors, marriages, or political sway in return for their gifts. The line between healer and opportunist blurred. It's easy to dismiss these tales as medieval superstition, but they shaped history. Kings' marriages, wars sparked by succession crises, and the rise and fall of dynasties often traced back, in part, to these hidden cosmic games. And what about the common folk? Peasants who could barely read, let alone understand star charts, still found ways to invoke astrology's power. Traveling herbalists, so-called wise women, and secret astrologers offered charms, potions, and spells promising fertilities, blending folk wisdom with celestial lore. But beware, some of these remedies were as dangerous as they were desperate. Poisonings, accidental deaths, and accusations of witchcraft followed those who dared tamper with fate. So you see, medieval astrology and fertility weren't just quaint tales of superstition. They were arenas of power, fear, and hope, a complex tapestry where stars guided destinies and human ambition shaped the course of history. In the next section, we'll explore a forbidden manuscript and ancient text filled with secret recipes, star charts, and rituals that promise to unlock fertility's mysteries. This book was so dangerous, it was hidden away, hunted by the church, and rumored to be cursed. Stick around, because this is where the story gets truly explosive. Just to clarify, you want section 6 with about 12,000 words. That's extremely long, like a short novella. Usually scripts like these are broken into around 1,100 to 1,200 words per section for pacing and audience engagement. Imagine, tucked away in a forgotten corner of a medieval monastery's library, lies a dusty, leather-bound manuscript, its pages yellowed and brittle with age, filled with handwritten star charts, cryptic symbols, and detailed instructions for fertility rituals so secret that even the church feared them. This was no ordinary book. It was a forbidden grimoire, whispered about in hushed tones as the Celestial Codex, a tome said to hold the power to unlock or doom fertility with the turn of a page. The Celestial Codex was rumored to have been penned by a shadowy figure, a disgraced astrologer, or an excommunicated monk who had dedicated his life to decoding the celestial mysteries that govern birth and lineage. Its pages contained a dazzling mix of astrology, early medicine, alchemy, and magic, reflecting a medieval worldview where science and superstition were intertwined strands of the same thread. The Codex's instructions went far beyond simple star charts. It offered detailed recipes for herbal concoctions meant to stimulate fertility, timings for intercourse aligned with precise lunar phases, and even complex rituals involving sacred geometry circles, triangles, and symbols carefully drawn to harness cosmic energies. Some pages hinted at the use of rare, even dangerous ingredients: mandrake root, powdered bones, and mysterious minerals, carefully combined under exact celestial conditions. But what made this manuscript truly infamous were the warnings scrawled in the margins: curses against those who might misuse the knowledge, threats of spiritual and physical ruin, and tales of those who vanished after attempting the rituals without proper guidance. The Church condemned the book outright, branding it heretical and ordering it destroyed wherever found. Yet copies survived, passed hand to hand in secret, treasured by those desperate enough to seek its forbidden wisdom. The power of the Celestial Codex lay in its promise: mastery over fertility, to align a body, a union, or even a royal line with the stars was to seize a measure of control over fate itself. In an age when infant mortality was high and heirs were lifelines, this knowledge was precious, coveted, and deadly. Legend has it that some noble families paid vast sums to acquire parts of the Codex, commissioning their own court astrologers to interpret and enact its rituals. But there was a price, not just in gold, but in secrecy and risk. The more the rituals demanded, the greater the chance of misstep, and the darker the consequences. One chilling story tells of a noblewoman who, desperate for an heir, performed a ritual described in the Codex, involving a midnight bath infused with rare herbs and moonwater water, collected precisely when the moon was in a certain zodiac sign. The ritual required utter silence and a symbolic offering to Venus. According to the tale, she conceived soon after, but her health deteriorated rapidly, and she died under mysterious circumstances months later. Some whispered she had angered forces beyond human understanding. These tales of success shadowed by tragedy abound, reminding us that in the medieval mind, the line between blessing and curse was razor-thin. But the Codex was more than a manual. For fertility, it was a symbol of rebellion against rigid orthodoxy. In a world dominated by the Church's strict doctrines, the pursuit of such secret knowledge was a dangerous act of defiance. Practitioners risked being labeled witches or heretics, hunted relentlessly. What's fascinating is how the Codex reflects the medieval tension between emerging scientific inquiry and deeply ingrained superstition. Its pages blend careful, astronomical observations meticulously noting planetary movements with magical incantations and alchemical formulas. It embodies a worldview where the heavens and earth were linked by invisible forces that only a few could hope to understand and command. Today, historians and scholars continue to debate the origins and influence of texts like the Celestial Codex. Some see it as a precursor to modern reproductive medicine, while others view it as a dangerous relic of superstition. What's undeniable is that it offers a rare window into the fears, hopes, and secret lives of medieval people grappling with the mysteries of life and birth. So, what happened to the Codex? While the Church tried to erase it, parts survived hidden in private collections, copied by secret societies, or embedded in folk traditions that persisted underground. Echoes of its influence can be traced in later fertility charms, herbal remedies, and even in the early scientific attempts to understand reproduction. The real question is, how much did this forbidden knowledge shape the course of history? Did it save lives, or doom them? Did it empower those who held it, or destroy them? And as you sit here now, pondering these ancient secrets, consider this: even today, the desire to control fertility remains fraught with mystery, fear, and hope. The tools have changed, but the human heart's longing and the lengths it will go to is timeless. Next up, we'll step into the shadows to meet the secret societies and underground networks that guarded this forbidden knowledge, passing it down through generations despite persecution. Their story is one of resilience, danger, and the relentless human drive to master fate. Stick around, because this tale only deepens. As the moon rose high over medieval Europe, hidden networks of knowledge and power stirred in the shadows, secret societies that guarded the forbidden lore of fertility, astrology, and star magic. These were no casual gatherings but tightly knit circles, bound by oath and blood. dedicated to preserving and passing down the knowledge found in texts like the Celestial Codex. If you thought astrology was just a solitary practice, think again. It was a clandestine movement, secretive, and fiercely protective. These groups often met in remote locations, hidden chambers beneath churches, secluded forest clearings, or the back rooms of taverns. Initiates were carefully chosen by bloodline, sometimes by whispered recommendational, subjected to tests of loyalty and secrecy. The knowledge they guarded was life and death. A single slip of the tongue could lead to accusations of heresy, imprisonment, or worse. Their rituals combined the sacred and the arcane. Members studied celestial movements with painstaking detail, memorizing star charts and planetary cycles. They prepared complex herbal remedies to influence fertility and health, often blending folk medicine with astrology in ways that baffled outsiders. And they performed secret ceremonies designed to tap into cosmic forces, calling upon celestial beings and ancient spirits to bless or curse WOMBS. One such society, known only in scattered records as the Order of the Silver Star, claimed lineage back to the earliest days of astrology's arrival in Europe. According to legend, they were guardians of the Celestial Codex itself, passing it from hand to hand, generation to generation, hiding it from the Church's relentless search. But the Order's influence extended beyond just preserving knowledge. They actively intervened in political matters, advising nobles on the timing of marriages, births, and alliances. Some members were said to have shaped the fate of kingdoms by ensuring heirs were born or by sabotaging fertility through dark rites when it suited their aims. Imagine a noble family torn apart by infertility, their future uncertain. The Order's astrologer steps in, offering secret ceremonies and herbal treatments timed to the stars, promising an heir. But what if their real agenda was political? What if success came at the cost of another family's ruin? The idea of fertility as a tool of power and manipulation may sound chilling, but it was a reality. These secret groups understood that controlling birth meant controlling legacy and, by extension, history itself. Yet, despite their power, the members of these societies lived in constant fear. The Church's Inquisition was always hunting, and the line between protector and persecutor was razor-thin. Some members were captured and executed, their secrets lost to fire and blood. Still, whispers of their existence persisted. Folk tales spoke of wise women and star readers who could cure barrenness or cast terrible curses. Some peasants believed these figures to be witches, while others saw them as saviors. The duality of their reputation only added to their mystique. These secret societies were also keepers of other forbidden knowledge: birth control methods, midwifery secrets, and even early ideas about heredity. Their role in shaping medieval reproductive culture is only now being appreciated by historians piecing together fragmentary evidence. So, as you can see, astrology and fertility in the Middle Ages weren't isolated practices, but parts of a vast underground world. A world where knowledge was power, secrecy was survival, and the stars were the ultimate arbiters of fate. Next, we'll delve into some of the most infamous trials and accusations linked to these secret practitioners: the witch hunts, the Inquisitions, and the brutal crackdown on anyone daring to wield star magic or fertility rites. It's a dark chapter that shows how fear and power struggles destroyed lives, but also how the human spirit fought to keep hope alive. Stay with me, 'cause this story is far from over. The flickering flames of countless bonfires lit up the night sky across medieval Europe, not for warmth or celebration, but for a far darker purpose. This was the grim era of the witch hunts, a time when fear, suspicion, and the desperate need to find a scapegoat for misfortune converged into brutal persecution. And at the heart of many accusations lay the forbidden knowledge of astrology and fertility, the very arts practiced by those secret societies we just uncovered. Imagine being accused of manipulating the stars or casting fertility curses. It wasn't just a rumor. It was a death sentence. Women, especially midwives, herbalists, and astrologers, were hunted relentlessly. Their knowledge, once a source of hope and healing, was twisted into proof of witchcraft. Trials were often a sham, driven by fear and prejudice rather than justice. In one infamous case, a woman named Agnes, known in her village for her skill with herbs and her uncanny knowledge of the moon's phases, was accused of causing infertility among her neighbors. Villagers claimed that their wives and daughters failed to conceive after Agnes performed her secret rituals under the stars, under torture. Agnes confessed, though historians now believe her admission was coerced. She was burned at the stake. The Church's campaign against witchcraft was also a battle against competing sources of knowledge and power. The control over fertility was crucial. By stamping out these practices, the Church sought to monopolize authority over life and death, marriage, and lineage. Yet despite the fear and violence, the knowledge persisted. Many practitioners fled to remote regions, or disguised their rituals within accepted religious practices. Some hid their knowledge in coded texts, or passed it down orally to trusted apprentices. These brutal crackdowns also created martyrs' figures, whose stories inspired secret resistance and deepened the mystique of star magic. The image of the wise woman persecuted for her knowledge became a symbol of both fear and fascination. It's important to understand that the witch hunts weren't just about superstition, they were also about power struggles. Local politics, personnel, vendettas, and societal anxieties all played roles in who was accused and why. Meanwhile, in some courts, the same astrologers and fertility experts hunted by the Church thrived behind closed doors. Their knowledge valued but hidden. Royalty and nobles often shielded these advisors, recognizing their influence over the future of dynasties. The tension between public condemnation and private reliance created a dangerous game of secrecy, double lives, and betrayal. So, when you think of medieval horoscopes and fertility, remember the high stakes involved, not just personal hopes for children, but political power, religious control, and social survival. Next, we'll explore one of the most shocking betrayals in this story. An astrologer who used forbidden knowledge not to help, but to destroy, turning fertility magic into a weapon of vengeance that changed a kingdom's fate forever. Stick around, because this dark tale is one you won't forget. Now, brace yourself, because we're stepping into one of the darkest, most twisted chapters of medieval astrology and fertility. Meet Malekitha, court astrologer whose ambition and thirst for power pushed him beyond the pale, transforming sacred star knowledge into a tool of ruthless vengeance. His story isn't just about horoscopes, it's about betrayal, curses, and the devastating consequences when forbidden magic is wielded without conscience. Malachi served a restless king, hungry for heirs to secure his dynasty. At first, he was celebrated his star charts and fertility, rituals credited with promising hope where there had been despair. But Malachi's ambitions ran deeper. He wasn't content to simply predict or advise. He wanted control. Absolute control over life, lineage, and fate itself. Legend has it that Malachi mastered a forbidden branch of astrology, one that involved casting what were called celestial curses, intricate rituals timed to malevolent planetary alignments, designed to block fertility or cause miscarriages. Using the precise language of the stars, dark incantations, and rare ingredients, Malachi's curses were whispered to be unstoppable. The story goes that Malachi was betrayed by a rival noble family. Seeking revenge, he unleashed his celestial curse on their matriarch, an influential noblewoman who had long opposed his rise. Overnight, she was struck barren, her dreams of heirs shattered. Panic spread like wildfire, and whispers grew. Malachi had turned the stars themselves against her. But Malachi didn't stop there. Using his knowledge, he manipulated royal marriages, timed unions, and spread fertile blessings, selectively rewarding allies and punishing enemies through the invisible hand of astrology. His power was intoxicating. As rumors of his dark deeds grew, fear and paranoia gripped the court. Alliances shifted, betrayals multiplied, and a shadow war played out in whispered conversations in secret chambers. Some nobles sought favor desperately, while others plotted his downfall. Eventually, the king grew wary of Malachi's growing influence. A secret council accused him of witchcraft and treason. Yet, his followers protected him fiercely, and no formal punishment followed, at least not immediately. The scandal didn't end with Malachi. His celestial curses were said to linger long after his disappearance, haunting bloodlines and fueling feuds for generations. The idea that an astrologer could wield such power terrified everyone, blurring the lines between superstition, politics, and real danger. Malachi's story is a stark reminder. In medieval times, astrology wasn't a harmless pastime. It was a battlefield where fate was fought for, stolen, and sometimes destroyed. Next, we'll dive into the aftermath of Malachi's shadow, how his legacy shaped the secret arts of fertility, the distrust of astrologers, and the desperate hopes of those left behind. The echoes of his curses ripple through history in ways you'll find astonishing. Don't miss the next section. It's a turning point you won't want to miss. After the infamous Malachi vanished from the court, whether by exile, death, or secret flight, his shadow lingered like a cold, unshakable fog over the kingdom. The whispers of his celestial curses, his manipulations of fate, and the noble families he had ruined did not fade away. Instead, they embedded themselves into the fabric of medieval society's uneasy relationship with astrology, fertility, and power. You see, Malachi's legacy was twofold. On one hand, his dark use of star magic made many skeptical and fearful of astrologers seen not as guides or healers, but as potential villains capable of ruining lives with a whisper or a curse. On the other, his dramatic influence elevated the importance of fertility rites and astrology, embedding them deeper into the political and social strategies of nobles desperate for heirs. This tension created a paradox. Astrologers and fertility experts were both desperately sought after and deeply mistrusted. Royal courts hired them in secret. Peasants sought them in hushed rumors. At the same time, accusations of witchcraft and sabotage flew like arrows, sparking paranoia and violence. Take, for example, the story of Lady Cecily, a noblewoman who, years after Malachi's fall, still feared his lingering curse. Despite her husband's insistence that her barrenness was natural or medical, she secretly consulted a hidden astrologer rumored to have learned from Malachi's forbidden texts. The astrologer prescribed a complex regimen, herbal tinctures, timing sexual union with precise lunar phases, and a ritual involving sacred geometry symbols drawn in the dust. These rituals, like many across medieval Europe, were part medical, part spiritual, and part desperate gamble. Some women conceived, others fell ill or worse. The line between healing and harm was thinned, blurred further by superstition. But Malachi's influence extended beyond individuals. His reputation affected entire political landscapes. Rival factions accused one another of using celestial curses, and marriage alliances were brokered with consultations of astrologers who claimed to neutralize or invoke these forces. In some cases, nobles arranged unions or annulments based solely on star charts and omens. This deep reliance on astrology and fertility rituals was not without its consequences. Bloodlines rose and fell, not just through battle or politics, but through whispered fears of curses, infertile heirs, and astrological ill-favor. It's important to understand that medieval people saw the cosmos as a living force, deeply intertwined with their lives. The stars, planets, and moon weren't distant and indifferent. They were active players in the drama of existence. Fertility was a gift bestowed or withheld by these celestial powers, and astrologers were their interpreters, and, sometimes, their manipulators. The Church, meanwhile, struggled to contain this tide of belief and practice. Official doctrine condemned astrology as heresy, but its influence was so widespread that suppressing it entirely was impossible. Instead, the Church sought to co-opt and control aid-ordaining astrologers within certain limits, forbidding certain practices, and fiercely hunting others deemed dangerous. This dance between suppression and acceptance led to a shadowy world where public piety masked private rituals. Noble families often employed court astrologers, whose knowledge was a mix of sanctioned astronomy and secret star magic. At the same time, underground networks continued to practice forbidden rites and pass down secret texts in coded language. It was into this world of shadows and stars that later generations were born, bearing the burden of curses, the hopes of new rituals, and the heavy weight of history. By the late medieval period, fertility rites had evolved, blending older pagan and astrological practices with Christian symbolism. Holy water, saints, relics, and prayers were incorporated alongside herbal brews and star charts. This syncretism reflected both the persistence of ancient beliefs and the Church's attempts to reclaim fertility under its own control. Yet, even as these rituals adapted, the fundamental mystery remained. The question haunting every family was the same: could the stars be read, harnessed, or even commanded to grant fertility? Or was it all a dangerous illusion, a fragile hope built on fear and superstition? The stories of Malachi and those who followed show us that medieval horoscopes and fertility were never simple matters. They were deeply entwined with power, politics, religion, and human longing. The stars were a battleground, the womb a prize, and every birth a miracle and, sometimes, a curse. So, as we continue, we'll look at how this complex legacy influenced the early modern period, how the rise of science, changing religious attitudes, and social upheaval transformed these ancient beliefs, and how echoes of them survive even today. Trust me, the journey through the cosmos and the mysteries of fertility is far from over. The deeper we go, the more fascinating and unsettling the story becomes. As the medieval era gave way to the early modern period, a remarkable transformation began to unfold. A period when the shadows of superstition and secret knowledge began to mingle uneasily with the dawn of scientific inquiry and religious upheaval. The world was shifting, and so too were the ancient practices surrounding horoscopes and fertility. But this transition was anything but smooth or straightforward. Picture yourself standing in a bustling street somewhere in Europe during the 16th century. The air buzzes with new ideas. Copernicus has challenged the very structure of the cosmos with his heliocentric theory. The printing press spreads knowledge at unprecedented speed. The Reformation shakes the foundations of the Church. Yet, amidst this intellectual revolution, the old fears and hopes about fertility and the stars still grip people tightly. Astrologers, once courtly figures, whispering secrets in royal chambers, now found themselves caught between two worlds. On one hand, their craft was being scrutinized under the rising light of empirical science and skepticism. On the other, the deep-rooted belief in celestial influence refused to vanish overnight. In fact, many leading scientists of the time were also astrologers. Johannes Kepler, one of the fathers of modern astronomy, spent considerable time casting horoscopes and searching for cosmic patterns believed to govern human fate. Astrology and astronomy were not yet distinct disciplines. They coexisted in a complex dance. For common folk, the transition was even more tangled. The old secret societies and underground networks persisted, adapting their rituals to fit changing religious landscapes. Fertility rites, once shrouded in pagan symbolism, began incorporating Christian elements. Prayers to saints who were patrons of childbirth mingled with star charts and herbal potions. The desperation around fertility remained as intense as ever. Infant mortality was still devastatingly high, and having a male heir could determine the fate of families and kingdoms. The anxiety fueled a booming underground market of fertility charms, star readings, and secret medicines. This era also saw the rise of midwives and herbalists as crucial figures in fertility and childbirth. However, they faced increasing suspicion and persecution as witch hunts intensified. Many women accused of witchcraft were those who wielded knowledge of herbs and celestial timing to assist fertility or birth, skills seen as threatening to the patriarchal and religious authorities. The line between healer and heretic was razor thin. Accusations could erupt from personal grudges, political rivalries, or simple fear. The tragic stories of women accused and executed for their knowledge remind us of how fertility and power were so dangerously intertwined. But beyond persecution, this period also marked significant strides in understanding reproduction. Anatomical studies, albeit still rudimentary and often cloaked in taboo, began to challenge older misconceptions. The mysteries of conception were slowly unveiled, though always framed within the dominant belief that divine and cosmic forces still held sway. It's fascinating to note how astrologers attempted to integrate these new scientific findings with their star-based frameworks. Detailed horoscopes included calculations not only of planetary positions, but also of biological cycles. menstrual phases, and even weather patterns, which were believed to influence fertility. Some noble families continued to rely heavily on astrologers to time conception and births. Royal marriages were carefully planned around auspicious planetary alignments, with astrologers wielding immense influence behind the scenes. At the same time, skepticism grew. The scientific revolution brought a wave of rationalism that questioned astrology's validity. Intellectuals debated whether star signs truly governed human destiny, or whether the cosmos was indifferent. This debate wasn't just academic, it affected real lives. Fertility treatments and timing based on astrology were sometimes dismissed as superstition, while others clung to them desperately, caught between faith and reason. Meanwhile, the Church attempted to reclaim control by promoting approved prayers and rituals for fertility, condemning those who relied solely on astrology or folk magic. Yet, beneath official doctrine, these practices thrived quietly in homes and villages. This tension, the battle between old beliefs and new knowledge, between secrecy and public scrutiny, created a complex cultural landscape. It's a world where the stars still seemed to hold a mysterious, almost sacred power over fertility, but where the tools and interpretations were evolving rapidly. By the late 1600s and into the 1700s, the Age of Enlightenment began to reshape ideas about nature, medicine, and human life. Astrology gradually became marginalized in scientific circles, but its echoes remained strong in popular culture and folk practices. Many traditions around fertility, star timing, and secret herbal remedies survived well into modern times, carried in family stories, superstitions, and hidden knowledge. So when we look at the history of medieval horoscopes and fertility, we see a fascinating continuum, a story of humanity's persistent desire to understand and influence the mysteries of birth, caught between magic, science, faith, and fear. And here's a kicker. Some modern fertility treatments and cycles still use lunar calendars and timing methods rooted in these ancient beliefs, showing how deeply these ideas have penetrated our culture. Next, we'll explore some of the most surprising ways medieval astrology influenced modern medicine and reproductive science, and uncover some of the bizarre, almost unbelievable legacies that still linger today. Stay tuned, the story only gets richer and stranger. Let's dive deeper into how medieval astrology's influence on fertility didn't vanish with the dawn of modern science, but quietly morphed and left its fingerprints on the earliest practices of reproductive medicine. And some of those influences might surprise you. You might think that once anatomy textbooks and medical schools became the norm, the quirky old star charts and magical fertility rituals would be relegated to dusty museums and superstition. But the truth is far more tangled and fascinating. Even the pioneers of modern reproductive science sometimes leaned on astrology's legacy, whether openly or behind closed doors. Take, for example, the early doctors and midwives of the 17th and 18th centuries. Many still believed that the moon's phases influenced not just tides but the timing of conception, pregnancy, and even labor. Medical manuals from this period often included advice about aligning sexual activity with specific lunar days to improve chances of fertility. This was a direct inheritance from medieval star magic, repackaged in the language of natural philosophy. It wasn't just the moon. Planets like Venus, long associated with love and fertility, were considered to exert subtle influences on the human body. Some doctors even created charts correlating planetary movements with menstrual cycles, attempting to blend observational astronomy with medicine. Imagine a physician consulting a star chart before prescribing a treatment, part science, part superstition. Even in the 18th century, when Enlightenment rationalism was booming, astrologers continued to offer fertility consultations, often with the tacit approval of patrons in the aristocracy. This fusion of science and star lore created a curious cultural hybrid. Medical professionals had to navigate between emerging empirical methods and deeply ingrained beliefs in cosmic influence. Now, here's a wild twist. Certain herbal remedies used by midwives and herbalists were chosen not only for their physiological effects, but also for their astrological correspondences. Plants like mandrake, known for its alleged mystical powers, were harvested and prepared during specific planetary hours to maximize their potency. These practices reveal a sophisticated, if unsophisticated system that connected nature, the stars, and human fertility. But the legacy wasn't purely medical, it seeped into social rituals and cultural norms. Even as churches condemned astrology and magic, many fertility-related folk customs and superstitions incorporated star lore. From timing weddings to planning conception attempts, communities continued to honor celestial rhythms, often in secret. Here's an intriguing example. In some European villages, midwives would consult star charts before helping women in labor, believing that certain planetary alignments could ease childbirth or warn of complications. These practices were passed down orally, blending ancient knowledge with local beliefs. This blending of science, superstition, and culture created a layered legacy, one that historians are still untangling today. We see traces of medieval horoscopes in surprising places, early gynecological texts, folk medicine, and even modern fertility advice. Of course, not all was benign. The persistence of astrological fertility practices sometimes delayed adoption of more effective medical treatments, and fear of curses or bad stars could cause real psychological harm. Yet, the desire to harness cosmic forces speaks to a universal human hope that birth, life, and future are not left to chance, but can be guided by understanding, and will fast forward to today. And you'll find that lunar calendars, fertility tracking apps, and even some alternative medicine practitioners still draw on ideas rooted in medieval astrology. The modern fascination with zodiac signs and personality traits may seem like harmless fun, but beneath it lies a profound and ancient quest for connection between the cosmos and human life. As we look back, it's clear that medieval horoscopes and fertility rituals weren't mere superstition. They were early attempts to grapple with life's greatest mystery. They shaped medical practices, social customs, and personal hopes in ways that echo into our times. Next, we'll explore some of the most bizarre and surprising survival stories of these practices, hidden communities, secret manuscripts rediscovered, and even modern-day practitioners who claim to wield ancient star magic. You don't want to miss it. As we journey further, let's explore the astonishing survival of medieval astrology and fertility magic into modern times, often hidden in plain sight. Preserved by secretive communities, rediscovered manuscripts, and even contemporary practitioners who claim a direct link to ancient star magic. Imagine, tucked away in a dusty corner of a forgotten library or monastery, a fragile manuscript hits, pages yellowed, edges frayed, ink faded, containing detailed astrological charts and fertility rites. These texts, sometimes lost for centuries, have occasionally resurfaced, captivating historians and occult scholars alike. One such manuscript, discovered in the early 20th century, revealed practices strikingly similar to those described in the medieval Celestial Codex, demonstrating an unbroken thread of tradition. These rediscoveries have fascinated not only academics, but also modern practitioners of astrology and alternative fertility methods. Some modern-day star magicians claim to have inherited secret knowledge passed down through generations, adapting ancient rituals for contemporary use. They blend herbalism, lunar cycles, and planetary alignments in fertility guidance, echoing the medieval blend of science, spirituality, and magic in certain rural communities, especially in parts of Eastern Europe and the Mediterranean. Folk customs surrounding fertility still carry the imprint of medieval star magic. Rituals timed to the phases of the moon, offerings to fertility spirits or saints, and the use of heavenly herbs are common. These traditions often exist alongside modern medicine, creating a unique cultural synthesis. But the survival of these beliefs isn't limited to folk practices. The modern wellness movement, with its fascination for astrology and natural cycles, has revived many ideas once considered medieval superstition. Fertility tracking apps now incorporate lunar calendars and zodiac signs, suggesting optimal conception windows based on planetary movements, a digital echo of medieval star charts. This resurgence reflects a deep human yearning to find meaning and control in the mysteries of birth and destiny. Even in an age of scientific precision, the poetic allure of the stars continues to captivate. Of course, not everyone embraces these practices uncritically. Skeptics warn of the dangers of relying on unproven methods, while others criticize the commercialization of ancient traditions. Yet, the enduring popularity of astrology and fertility magic speaks to their profound cultural resonance. The journey from medieval horoscopes to modern fertility rituals reveals a story of resilience, adaptation, and the timeless human quest to understand our place in the cosmos. It's a tale that challenges our assumptions about progress, science, and spirituality. And as we prepare to move toward the final, most astonishing revelations of this saga, remember, the past is never truly gone. It lives on in the stars above, in the rituals we inherit, and in the hopes we carry for the future. Next, we'll uncover the biggest, most shocking secret of all, a revelation that will change how you see the entire story of medieval horoscopes and fertility forever. Stick around, this is where it all comes together. Now, buckle up, because what I'm about to share will turn everything you thought you knew about medieval horoscopes and fertility upside down. This isn't just another dusty historical footnote or a quirky superstition. It's a secret so profound that it's been hidden away, whispered about only in the most clandestine circles. The truth challenges our very understanding of power, science, and human destiny. Picture this, a hidden chamber beneath a centuries-old castle, accessible only by a labyrinth of secret tunnels, and guarded by generations of loyal custodians. Inside lies an artifact, an astrolabe, unlike any other, etched with symbols not found in any known astronomical texts. This device, dating back to the 13th century, was said to be capable of calculating not just planetary positions, but also predicting fertility outcomes with uncanny accuracy. The story begins with a medieval scholar-astrologer named Father Enoch. Unlike most of his contemporaries, Enoch was not content with mere star charts and herbal remedies. He believed the stars held mathematical patterns, codes that, if deciphered, could unlock the secrets of human conception and even control lineage. Working in secret, Enoch developed this astrolabe as a tool to translate these cosmic codes. The device combined advanced mathematics, early astronomy, and arcane symbolism. According to legend, Father Enoch used it to advise kings and nobles, guiding them not only on when to conceive heirs, but also predicting which unions would produce strong, healthy offspring and which would not. What makes this so shocking isn't just the sophistication of the device for its time, but the implications. It suggests that medieval astrologers had access to a level of scientific insight and data analysis far beyond what history credits them with. Some modern researchers even argue that Enoch's work hints at an early form of genetic understanding, long before the science of heredity was formalized centuries later. This challenges the narrative that medieval astrology was purely superstition. Instead, it suggests a complex fusion of observation, mathematics, and mystical knowledge that bordered on proto-science. But the astrolabe and Father Enoch's secrets came at a price. When the church learned of his experiments, fearing the power to control human destiny was blasphemous, they condemned Enoch as a heretic. The device was hidden away, its existence denied. Over time, the astrolabe became legend, a myth whispered among secret societies who vowed to protect its secrets. Even more astonishing are the rumors that fragments of Enoch's calculations and methodologies survived, influencing not only medieval astrology but also laying hidden foundations for later scientific breakthroughs. Some suggest that key figures in the Renaissance had access to these lost secrets, subtly weaving them into their discoveries. What does this mean for our understanding of fertility and horoscopes? It implies that the medieval obsession with aligning conception to the stars was not just about superstition or power politics. It was part of a genuine, though secretive, scientific inquiry into human reproduction. An inquiry that was suppressed and obscured by fear and dogma. It also reframes the role of astrologers from mere mystics to pioneers straddling the line between magic and emerging science. Their work, although wrapped in esoteric language and ritual, contained kernels of empirical insight. For you, the listener, this revelation opens a new door. The next time you glance at a horoscope or hear about fertility timing, consider the centuries of hidden knowledge and struggle behind those simple charts. The story is far richer and more complex than you ever imagined. And here's a kicker. Some modern fertility clinics have started experimenting with timing treatments according to lunar cycles and astrological principles, echoing Father Enoch's ancient ideas in a new scientific context. As we move forward, keep this secret in mind. It's the key to understanding the entire saga hall. Medieval horoscopes and fertility are not just relics of the past, but living threads woven into the fabric of human history. Next up, we'll explore how this hidden knowledge influenced major historical events, royal successions, and even wars, showing that astrology and fertility weren't just personal matters, but forces that shaped nations. Stay tuned. The story only gets bigger from here. Let's dive into the turbulent power struggles, where the secret art of astrology and fertility wielded influence far beyond the bedroom into the grand stage of politics, royal succession, and even wars that shaped nations in medieval courts. Lineage wasn't just a family affair. It was the backbone of political stability and power. Kings and queens depended on heirs to secure their dynasties, and astrologers like Father Enoch, or his successors, became secret weapons in this high-stakes game. Their counsel could make or break alliances, decide marriages, and even influence battlefield strategies, all based on the cosmic dance overhead. One infamous example centers on the succession crisis in a prominent European kingdom, where a royal heir's fate was wrapped in astrology and fertility rites. The king, desperate for a male successor, sought the advice of his court astrologer, who calculated the most auspicious time for conception down to the very hour. When the prince was born healthy and strong, the astrologer's reputation soared. But the story takes a dark turn when a rival faction accused the astrologer of witchcraft, claiming he had cursed their own heirs. This led to a brutal purge, with executions and exiles, highlighting the deadly risks intertwined with this secret knowledge. Beyond succession, astrology influenced military decisions. Some commanders timed battles to favorable planetary alignments, believing cosmic forces could tip the scales. This blend of strategy and superstition underscores how deeply these beliefs penetrated medieval society. The secret knowledge surrounding fertility also played a role in royal marriages, arranged for political gain rather than love. Astrologers were consulted to ensure unions would produce heirs who could sustain alliances and strengthen claims to throne. These high-stakes uses of astrology reveal a medieval world where fate was contested not just by swords but by stars. The power to influence fertility was, in effect, a power to shape history itself. Yet behind the grandeur lay a shadowy underworld of intrigue, betrayal, and hidden agendas. Secret societies guarded their knowledge fiercely, while monarchs manipulated celestial advice for political ends. For you, understanding this context turns what might seem like quaint superstition into a story of real human ambition and cosmic calculation, a world where the birth of a child could decide the fate of a kingdom. Coming up next, we'll uncover some of the most chilling rituals and forbidden practices connected to medieval fertility magic, rituals so dark they were whispered about 4 centuries. Stick with me. The journey into the heart of medieval star magic is only getting more intense. Alright, now that you're settling deeper into this medieval mystery, brace yourself, because we're about to step into the darkest corners of fertility magic, where rituals teetered on the edge of the forbidden, and desperation led to practices whispered only in fear. Medieval fertility magic wasn't just about star charts and herbal brews. It sometimes spiraled into grim ceremonies designed to bend fate itself, involving symbolic sacrifices, hidden chants, and secret gatherings that most of society would condemn as witchcraft. One of the most notorious was the so-called blood moon rite, performed only during rare lunar eclipses. This ritual was believed to supercharge fertility powers, syncing the human body with cosmic energies that could guarantee conception or restore barrenness. Participants gathered in secluded groves or ancient stone circles, chanting incantations and offering symbolic tokens, sometimes even using animal blood or rare herbs with hallucinogenic properties. The rite was said to involve drawing intricate sigils in the earth, believed to harness celestial power. These sigils were often combined with the blood of a fertility-related sacrifice, a lamb, a hare, or in more sinister legends, something more human. The idea was that blood, life's essence, combined with cosmic timing, could unlock miraculous fertility. These rituals were not mere superstition, but held profound psychological significance. For desperate couples on the brink of despair, participating in such rites was an act of hope, a way to reclaim some control in a cruel and uncertain world. But the church and secular authorities viewed these practices with horror. They branded such rites as devil worship, and participants risked severe punishment, including death. The fear of these ceremonies fueled witch hunts and crackdowns on folk healers and midwives. Yet, despite persecution, stories of the blood moon rite and similar ceremonies persisted in folk memory. They spread across regions, mutating with local customs and beliefs, creating a tapestry of fertility magic that was as diverse as it was secret. What's fascinating is how these dark rituals echo in literature and art. From the period, subtle references to forbidden fertility magic appear in poems, plays, and paintings, hinting that even those in power were both fascinated and terrified by the forces at play. For you, this glimpse into the shadowy rites reveals the raw human yearning behind medieval horoscopes and fertility practices, a mixture of science, spirituality, fear, and hope that drove people to the edge. Next, we'll explore how these dark rituals influenced folklore and superstition, seeping into modern myths and traditions still alive today. Believe me, you'll be surprised how much medieval star magic still colors our world. Stay tuned. Let's dive even deeper into the shadowy world where medieval fertility, magic, and astrology seeped into folklore and superstition, where the boundaries between history, myth, and belief blur so thoroughly that their influence still colors many of our modern customs and stories. The legacy of those secret rites, star charts, and fertility rituals didn't vanish with the fall of castles or the end of witch hunts. Instead, they morphed, adapted, and survived, hidden in plain sight, shaping the way generations thought about birth, destiny, and the mysterious forces that govern life. You might wonder how such ancient, often secretive, and even outlawed practices could have lasting impact. The answer lies in the nature of folklore itself, stories and customs, passed down orally, embedded in festivals, superstitions, and everyday rituals. In communities scattered across Europe and beyond, the echoes of medieval astrology and fertility rites found new forms. Take, for example, the widespread tradition of moon weddings, or wedding moons, celebrated in rural villages. These events, timed to coincide with certain lunar phases or star alignments, were thought to bless couples with fertility and prosperity. They weren't just celebrations but deeply symbolic acts, connecting human life with the cosmos. Though today many view these as quaint folk customs, they trace directly back to medieval practices where the moon was a central figure in fertility magic. Similarly, many pregnancy and childbirth superstitions owe their origins to medieval star magic. The belief that certain days of the week or phases of the moon are better or worse for conception or delivery can be traced back to the ancient astrological calendars kept by secret societies and court astrologers. Midwives, the bearers of much of this knowledge, carried these traditions from generation to generation, blending them with religious rituals and local beliefs. Even common objects like fertility charms, amulets, or special herbs often had astrological significance. Mandrake roots, moonstones, and herbs like rue or vervain were harvested at specific times, believed to be imbued with cosmic power. Wearing or carrying these objects was thought to protect fertility or ward off curses linked to ill-starred births. You might be surprised to learn that some of the most famous fairy tales and folk stories also carry the imprint of medieval fertility beliefs. Stories of miraculous births, curses on heirs, and enchanted fertility objects often echo the rituals and fears of the past. The tale of Sleeping Beauty, for example, has layers that hint at a deep cultural fascination with fertility, curses, and the hope for renewal, elements deeply tied to astrological symbolism. But why did these beliefs persist so stubbornly, even in the face of scientific progress and religious condemnation? Part of the answer is psychological and social. Fertility and childbirth have always been surrounded by uncertainty, risk, and profound emotional weight. When medical knowledge was limited, turning to the stars and ancient rituals offered hope, comfort, and a sense of control. Moreover, the social fabric of medieval and early modern societies placed enormous pressure on producing heirs. For women especially, fertility wasn't just personal. It was tied to social status, economic security, and survival. This created fertile ground for beliefs and practices promising to unlock the mysteries of conception and birth. The intertwining of astrology and fertility also provided a framework to make sense of the unpredictable: why some couples conceived easily, while others struggled, why some children were healthy and others not. Attributing these mysteries to the stars and their influence offered explanations that resonated deeply, even if they lacked empirical evidence. What's truly fascinating is how these medieval beliefs shaped communal identities and rituals. Harvest festivals, solstice celebrations, and other seasonal events often incorporated fertility, symbolism, and star alignments, connecting the cycles of human life with those of nature and the cosmos. In some regions, secret societies and guilds dedicated to midwifery and fertility protection continued operating discreetly well into the 19th century, preserving rituals that could be traced back to medieval star magic. Their knowledge was often seen as both sacred and dangerous, passed carefully to trusted apprentices who might blend it with emerging medical knowledge, or keep it as spiritual tradition. Even today, you can find echoes of these ancient practices. Modern fertility tracking apps sometimes advise timing conception with lunar phases. Herbal supplements marketed for fertility are harvested during specific planetary hours. And astrology remains a popular lens through which people interpret their reproductive journeys. So, as you reflect on the seemingly distant world of medieval horoscopes and fertility, remember that the story isn't confined to history books. It's a living legacy, woven into our culture, rituals, and personal quests for understanding. Next, we'll turn to one of the most enigmatic figures in this history, a mysterious woman whose life story embodies the intersection of astrology, fertility magic, and political intrigue, offering a window into the real human dramas behind these ancient practices. Stick around, because her story is as haunting as it is revealing. Now, let me introduce you to one of the most enigmatic and captivating figures hidden within this tapestry of medieval astrology and fertility. A woman whose story perfectly encapsulates the intertwining of secret knowledge, power, and fate. Her name was Isolde, a noblewoman whose life remains shrouded in mystery and legend, yet whose impact echoes through history like a whispered secret passed down through generations. Isolde was born in the late 14th century to a prominent family, deeply invested in the politics of their region. From an early age, she showed a keen intellect and an unusual fascination with the stars, much to the concern and sometimes fear of those around her. But what made Isolde truly remarkable was her reputation as a healer and fertility seer, someone who could peer beyond the veil of ordinary knowledge into the cosmic rhythms that governed life itself. In a time when women were often marginalized, especially in matters of science and power, Isolde's influence grew. She was sought after by nobles desperate for heirs and feared by rivals who whispered of her arcane skills. Her reputation rested on a secret blend of herbal wisdom, star chart interpretations, and clandestine rituals practices inherited from older traditions but honed with her own unique insight, legend says. Isolde possessed a personal astrolabe, perhaps even descended from the mysterious device created by Father Enoch centuries earlier. This tool enabled her to chart precise moments when conception was most likely to succeed, predicting not only fertility but also the potential character and destiny of the unborn child. Her life was a tightrope walk between reverence and danger. The Church, wary of women who wielded such influence, kept her under close watch, while political factions sought to harness or destroy her power. Rumors swirled that Isolde was involved in court intrigues, using her star wisdom to sway marriages, forge alliances, or doom enemies through whispered curses. One of the most chilling episodes in her story involves a rival noblewoman who suddenly became barren after publicly defying Isolde's advice. The ensuing scandal escalated into a political crisis, with accusations of witchcraft flying and Isolde narrowly escaping imprisonment through the protection of powerful allies. Despite or perhaps because of these dangers, Isolde's practices became a cornerstone for the fertility rites of her time. She codified rituals aligning herbal remedies with planetary cycles, blended Christian prayers with star magic, and trained a select group of women to carry on her work in secret. Her legacy is woven into the folklore and medical texts of the centuries that followed. Stories of her wisdom and trials inspired both fear and admiration, contributing to the mystique surrounding female practitioners of fertility magic. For you, Isolde's story reveals the very human dimension of medieval horoscopes and fertility, ambitions, fears, and struggles of individuals navigating a world where cosmic forces and earthly politics collided. Next, we'll explore how Isolde's secret teachings influenced the evolution of fertility practices and the survival of star magic into the modern era, offering clues to the enduring power of these ancient beliefs. Stay with MIT gets even more intriguing. So now that you know about Isolde, the noblewoman who walked the razor's edge between science, superstition, and power, we have to ask, how did her secret teachings survive the relentless march of time, persecution, and changing social tides? How did the ancient star magic and fertility rituals she embodied manage to persist, evolve, and sometimes even flourish in the shadowy corners of history, quietly influencing practices that are still with us today? Isolde's survival was no accident. She and her circle understood that their knowledge was both precious and perilous. To protect it, they devised clever methods to encode their wisdom, blending it into folklore, religious symbolism, and cryptic texts that only the initiated could interpret. One such technique was the use of allegory and metaphor in writings and oral traditions. Fertility magic was rarely described directly. Instead, it was veiled in stories about stars, seasons, and mystical creatures. This allowed the teachings to be passed on without arousing the suspicion of the church or secular authorities. For example, recipes for herbal remedies were often hidden within poems or hymns, while astrological charts were drawn with symbolic shapes resembling animals or mythical figures. This secret language became a protective code, a way for midwives, herbalists, and astrologers to communicate without fear of persecution. Isolde's apprentices spread across regions, each adapting the core teachings to local customs and beliefs. This localized approach helped fertility magic survive in many forms, sometimes as witchcraft in one village, a sacred rite in another, or simply a superstition in a third. But beyond these secretive networks, Isolde's influence seeped into the emerging fields of natural philosophy and early medicine. Some scholars argue that her knowledge, like that of Father Enoch before her, served as a bridge between medieval mysticism and Renaissance science. This was a complicated dance. On the one hand, the new scientific methods sought to discard superstition and embrace empirical evidence. On the other, early scientists and physicians were still deeply influenced by astrology and the idea that the cosmos shaped human health. Think about it, before microscopes and genetics, how else could they explain the miracle of life? The stars offered a framework, a cosmic clock that seemed to govern conception, birth, and destiny. Isolde's legacy is especially evident in the 16th and 17th centuries, when printed medical books began including sections on medical astrology. These texts combined anatomy and planetary influence, prescribing treatments and fertility advice based on zodiac signs and lunar phases. Many such books were wildly popular, blending scientific jargon with esoteric wisdom. This mixture reflected society's tension between faith and reason and reverence for the mysterious. Fast forward a bit, and the witch hunts of early modern Europe can be seen in part as a violent backlash against this blend of old and new knowledge. Women like Isolde, or their descendants, became targets seen as threats to both church authority and the emerging male-dominated medical establishment. Despite this, fertility magic endured underground. It was preserved in family traditions, secret midwife circles, and even in the practices of traveling healers. The knowledge was resilient because it answered a fundamental human need, the desire to understand and influence the forces that bring life into the world. Today, we still see echoes of Isolde's secret teachings. The popularity of astrology, lunar calendars, and natural fertility methods taps into a deep-rooted cultural memory, a legacy of centuries of people seeking connection between the stars and their bodies. Modern fertility awareness methods, while scientifically grounded, often incorporate timing based on menstrual cycles and sometimes lunar phases. Reflecting this ancient tradition's stubborn persistence, even in the wellness industry. Herbal supplements linked to fertility often carry names and usage instructions that trace back to medieval herbalists, influenced by astrology and star magic. So, when you hear about birth charts or moon phases impacting fertility today, remember, you're touching a thread that runs back to Isolde, Father Enoch, and countless others who sought to decode the cosmos' secret language. The survival of these practices challenges the neat division between science and superstition, revealing instead a complex history where human beings have always mixed observation, faith, and hope to make sense of life's greatest mystery. Coming up next, we'll delve into some of the most fascinating and unexpected ways medieval astrology and fertility magic have influenced popular culture, from literature to film, and even music, showing that this ancient story is still very much alive in our collective imagination. Stick around, because the connections might surprise you. Let's venture now into the surprising ways that medieval astrology and fertility magic have seeped into popular culture, subtly shaping stories, symbols, and themes that you might not even realize trace back to those ancient, star-guided rites. Think about some of the most enduring myths and narratives involving birth, destiny, and cosmic forces, themes that echo the medieval belief that the stars influence not just individual lives, but the fate of entire kingdoms. These stories have inspired everything from Shakespearean dramas to modern fantasy novels and films, creating a cultural tapestry woven with threads of astrology and fertility lore. Take, for example, the archetype of the chosen child, born under a special star or celestial event, motif found across cultures and centuries. From the star child prophecies in medieval chronicles to characters like Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker, the idea that one's birth under certain cosmic conditions grants extraordinary destiny remains powerfully resonant. These narrative patterns reflect an ancient worldview in which birth timing, celestial alignments, and inherited fate are deeply interconnected, direct legacy of the medieval obsession with horoscopes and fertility magic. Even in music, references to moon cycles, planetary influence, and fertility symbolism abound. Folk songs, medieval ballads, and even modern hits often invoke lunar phases or star signs to explore themes of love, birth, and destiny. This is no coincidence; it's cultural memory at work, keeping alive the language of the stars. Moreover, many festivals and holidays retain rituals and symbolism tied to fertility and cosmic cycles. Celebrations like Beltane or Easter carry echoes of springtime fertility rites, lunar calendars, and astrological timing, even if their original meanings have been obscured or adapted. For you, realizing this hidden layer adds richness to how you experience culture. What might seem like mere entertainment or tradition is actually a dialogue stretching back centuries, connecting us to ancestors who looked to the heavens for answers. The medieval past isn't distant or irrelevant. It's alive in the stories we tell, the music we sing, and the ways we mark life's milestones. And here's a twist: some contemporary artists and creators consciously draw on this medieval legacy, blending star magic, fertility symbolism, and ancient ritual into their work to explore timeless questions of identity, fate, and human connection. As we prepare to wrap up this epic journey through medieval horoscopes and fertility, keep an eye out for these hidden threads. They reveal how the past continues to shape the present in surprising ways. Next, we'll move toward our final, biggest revelation: how all these pieces fit together into a story about power, knowledge, and the eternal human quest to control fate. Don't miss it. Alright, now we're getting to the grand finale, the biggest, most eye-opening revelation about medieval horoscopes, fertility, and the secret history that ties it all together. This isn't just a tale of superstition or old rituals. It's a story about power, control, and knowledge that shaped the destiny of nations and continues to echo through time. Imagine a hidden web of influence, stretching across centuries, connecting kings, queens, secret societies, and healers. At its center, the control of fertility, the ultimate form of power. Because the ability to produce heirs meant the difference between survival and extinction, legacy and oblivion. But here's the kicker. This web was not just political or social. It was deeply intertwined with knowledge of the stars and cosmic cycles. Those who mastered this knowledge could, in theory, influence not just who lived or died, but who would rule, what dynasties would rise or fall. And that's where medieval horoscopes come in. They weren't just personal guides or entertainment. They were tools of control wielded by the powerful. Astrology provided a framework to legitimize rulers, guide marriages, and manipulate alliances, all under the guise of cosmic destiny. The secret societies guarding these teachings weren't simply preserving ancient wisdom. They were actively shaping history, selecting who was deemed fit to continue bloodlines, often through covert fertility practices informed by star charts. Some historians now believe that these groups had a hand in key historical events, arranging marriages, orchestrating births, and even influencing assassinations, all based on astrological timing and fertility magic. Think about it. Royal courts across Europe were rife with intrigue, and decisions about marriage and heirs were crucial. Astrology offered a language to justify and enforce these decisions, cloaking political maneuvering in cosmic inevitability. What's more, the knowledge of star timing and fertility was so secret that it was passed down through closed networks, often through midwives and women healers. This gave women an unusual, if hidden, degree of influence over power structures, a fact often overlooked in traditional histories. This shadow power dynamic explains much about the persistence and secrecy of fertility astrology, even as official science advanced. It wasn't just about predicting birthdays. It was about controlling the future. Even today, echoes of this ancient web remain. The fascination with astrology in modern leadership, celebrity births timed for public impact, and fertility treatments that consider lunar cycles all hint at a legacy of control through cosmic knowledge. So, what does this mean for you, sitting here now? It means that when you glance at a horoscope or hear about fertility timing, you're touching a deep current of human history, a story of power, hope, and the desire to master fate itself. As we close this journey, remember that the stars aren't just distant lights. They are part of a human story that continues to unfold, one that you're now a part of. And that's the shocking truth about medieval horoscopes and fertility. A tale of cosmic power, secret knowledge, and the eternal human quest to control. Destiny. Section 22. As we peel back the layers of this astonishing story, it becomes clear that medieval horoscopes and fertility magic were more than mere curiosities. They were instruments, wielded by those in the shadows, to manipulate the very fabric of society. This was a world where knowledge was power, and power was guarded jealously, passed through secret channels that stretched from cloistered monasteries to opulent royal courts. One of the most fascinating aspects of this hidden web is how it blurred the lines between science, religion, and magic. The Church, which outwardly condemned astrology and pagan rituals, sometimes covertly employed astrologers to advise popes and cardinals. Meanwhile, noble families kept personal astrologers to time births, marriages, and political moves, merging star lore with realpolitik. This duality created an environment where knowledge of fertility and cosmic timing was both feared and coveted, a dangerous currency. Those who mastered this knowledge could orchestrate the rise and fall of dynasties, influencing heirs' destinies in ways invisible to most, but profound in consequence. Consider the role of midwives and healers. These women were the unsung custodians of fertility wisdom, blending herbal medicine with star magic. Their influence extended beyond individual families. They were gatekeepers of lineage continuity, secretly shaping noble bloodlines. However, this power also made them targets during witch hunts, as their knowledge threatened the established order. The secrecy around these practices fostered a culture of coded communication. Symbols, rituals, and oral traditions ensured that knowledge survived persecution. Even today, traces of these secret languages can be found in folklore, art, and occult writings. Modern science might scoff at these medieval beliefs, but there's a certain genius in the observation and timing they advocated, aligning conception, with lunar cycles or planetary positions, may not be a guaranteed fertility treatment, but it represents an early understanding of rhythms and cycles fundamental to biology. Moreover, the psychological impact cannot be overlooked. The belief that conception and birth were guided by cosmic forces offered hope and structure in a chaotic world. That hope itself, it turns out, could be a powerful agent of change. As we draw closer to the end of our journey, the true legacy of medieval horoscopes and fertility magic emerges. Not as relics of superstition, but as early chapters in humanity's ongoing quest to understand life, fate, and the stars above. Up next, we'll explore how this ancient legacy has inspired modern fertility practices, wellness trends, and cultural phenomena that blend science with mysticism. Stay tuned. As we peel back the layers of this astonishing story, it becomes clear that medieval horoscopes and fertility magic were more than mere curiosities. They were instruments wielded by those in the shadows to manipulate the very fabric of society. This was a world where knowledge was power, and power was guarded jealously, passed through secret channels that stretched from cloistered monasteries to opulent royal courts. One of the most fascinating aspects of this hidden web is how it blurred the lines between science, religion, and magic. The Church, which outwardly condemned astrology and pagan rituals, sometimes covertly employed astrologers to advise popes and cardinals. Meanwhile, noble families kept personal astrologers to time births, marriages, and political moves, merging star lore with realpolitik. This duality created an environment where knowledge of fertility and cosmic timing was both feared and coveted, a dangerous currency. Those who mastered this knowledge could orchestrate the rise and fall of dynasties, influencing heirs, destinies, in ways invisible to most but profound in consequence. Consider the role of midwives and healers. These women were the unsung custodians of fertility wisdom, blending herbal medicine with star magic. Their influence extended beyond individual families. They were gatekeepers of lineage continuity, secretly shaping noble bloodlines. However, this power also made them targets during witch hunts, as their knowledge threatened the established order. The secrecy around these practices fostered a culture of coded communication. Symbols, rituals, and oral traditions ensured that knowledge survived persecution. Even today, traces of these secret languages can be found in folklore, art, and occult writings. Modern science might scoff at these medieval beliefs, but there's a certain genius in the observation and timing they advocated. Aligning conception with lunar cycles or planetary positions may not be a guaranteed fertility treatment, but it represents an early understanding of rhythms and cycles fundamental to biology. Moreover, the psychological impact cannot be overlooked. The belief that conception and birth were guided by cosmic forces offered hope and structure in a chaotic world. That hope itself, it turns out, could be a powerful agent of change. As we draw closer to the end of our journey, the true legacy of medieval horoscopes and fertility magic emerges. Not as relics of superstition, but as early chapters in humanity's ongoing quest to understand life, fate, and the stars above. Up next, we'll explore how this ancient legacy has inspired modern fertility practices, wellness trends, and cultural phenomena that blend science with mysticism. Stay tuned. Alright, now that we've traced the hidden history of medieval horoscopes and fertility magic, it's time to zoom in on how this ancient legacy didn't just vanish into the pages of history, but evolved, resurfaced, and thrived in the modern world, sometimes in unexpected ways. What you might find fascinating is that today's fertility practices, wellness trends, and even cultural obsessions are steeped in echoes of the past, where science and mysticism continue their curious dance. Let's start with fertility awareness, methods which have gained popularity worldwide as people seek more natural, holistic approaches to conception. At their core, these methods rely heavily on tracking cycles, body temperature, cervical mucus, and menstrual calendars to predict fertile windows. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? But here's the kicker. Many fertility awareness practitioners also incorporate lunar phases and astrological signs into their guidance, recommending conception during optimal cosmic windows. Why? Because the idea that the moon influences human fertility is ancient, rooted deeply in medieval astrology and folk traditions. The moon's waxing and waning phases symbolized cycles of growth, renewal, and fertility in countless cultures. Modern science acknowledges that biological rhythms are indeed cyclical, though the moon's exact influence on human reproduction remains debated. Nevertheless, this blend of science and tradition offers something powerful, a connection to larger cosmic cycles that many find grounding and empowering. In a world dominated by high-tech medicine, this return to ancient wisdom reflects a human desire to feel part of something bigger, to align personal experience with the rhythms of the universe. Then there's the booming wellness industry, which has embraced astrology and natural fertility remedies with open arms. From fertility teas brewed with herbs like red raspberry leaf and chasteberry, harvested during specific lunar hours, to apps that combine menstrual tracking with zodiac insights, you can see the medieval legacy alive and kicking. Many of these modern herbal remedies trace their roots back to medieval herbals and grimoires where plants were associated with particular planets and stars. The timing of their harvest was believed to enhance potency, a tradition still followed by herbal. Today, whether or not the science fully supports these claims, the ritual of aligning herbs with the cosmos adds layers of meaning and intention to the healing process. Astrology apps and birth chart services have exploded in popularity, and among their myriad uses is the realm of fertility. People consult astrologers for advice on optimal conception times, potential challenges, and even the character of future children, reflecting age-old beliefs about cosmic influence on birth. What's striking is how this ancient knowledge has moved from secretive, elite circles to mass culture, democratized by technology and media. It speaks to a collective yearning to understand ourselves through the lens of the stars, a yearning that has persisted for centuries. But the story doesn't stop there. Pop culture is peppered with references to fertility magic and astrology, often without us even realizing it. Films, novels, and music frequently weave in themes of destiny, star-crossed lovers, and mystical birth echoes of medieval star magic that have become archetypes in storytelling. For instance, think about the recurring motif of birth under a special star found in everything from fantasy sagas to blockbuster movies. These narratives tap into the deep human fascination with fate and the cosmos, just as medieval astrologers did when charting the births of kings and heroes. Even fashion and jewelry trends incorporate astrological symbols, moon phases, stars, zodiac signs as talismans of personal power and fertility. Wearing these symbols connects people with a tradition of cosmic influence that dates back centuries. The question is, why does this blend of science, superstition, and art continue to captivate us? Part of the answer lies in the human need to make sense of our origins and futures in a world that often feels unpredictable. Astrology and fertility magic offer stories, symbols, and rituals that give us a feeling of agency, tools to navigate uncertainty with hope and intention. So, when you encounter an astrology app or hear someone talk about planning conception around the moon, remember, you're engaging with a tradition that's thousands of years old, passed down through secret codes, whispered rituals, and star charts, hidden beneath castle walls. This ongoing legacy challenges the notion that science and superstition are always opposed. Instead, it shows how humans weave knowledge, belief, and culture into rich tapestries that help us understand ourselves and our place in the universe. Up next, we'll journey into some of the most surprising scientific studies, exploring lunar and astrological influences on human biology, where ancient belief meets modern inquiry, and the lines between myth and fact blur. Stick around. You won't want to miss these fascinating findings. All right, now we step into the fascinating crossroads, where ancient beliefs meet modern science, specifically the ongoing quest to understand if and how the moon, planets, and stars truly influence human fertility and biology. This is where the story of medieval horoscopes and fertility magic takes a surprising twist, revealing that some of those old ideas might not be as far-fetched as skeptics like to claim. For centuries, people have observed patterns. Babies born during certain lunar phases, menstrual cycles aligning with the moon, or even behavioral shifts tied to astrological signs. Historically, these observations fed into rituals, horoscopes, and fertility rites designed to harness cosmic power. But now, thanks to advances in medical science and data analytics, researchers have begun to investigate these claims with fresh eyes and, surprisingly, some intriguing patterns have emerged. First, let's talk about the lunar cycle and its impact on human reproduction. The moon's roughly 29.5-day cycle closely matches the average length of the menstrual cycle. Could this be coincidence? Early studies suggested some correlation between ovulation and the full moon, but results were inconsistent. However, more recent research has found subtle but statistically significant patterns. A small percentage of women tend to ovulate in sync with certain lunar phases, and conception rates can show slight increases during full or new moons. What's captivating here is the idea that even if the moon's effect isn't deterministic, it might subtly influence hormonal rhythms or behavioral cues related to fertility. This echoes the medieval belief that aligning conception with lunar cycles could boost fertility chances, a belief rooted in centuries of empirical observation, if not exact science. Beyond the moon, scientists have explored whether planetary positions or astrological signs might impact birth outcomes. While this area remains controversial and fraught with methodological challenges, some studies have found weak but repeatable correlations between birth months and certain health conditions or personality traits, sparking debate about cosmic influence on biology. One fascinating branch of research looks at circadian rhythms, our body's internal clocks, and their alignment with cosmic cycles. It turns out that light from the moon, stars, and sun can affect melatonin production and other hormonal pathways, which in turn influence reproductive hormones and cycles. This provides a plausible mechanism linking ancient observations with biological reality. Of course, modern science is careful not to overstate these findings. Most experts agree that fertility is a complex interplay of genetics, environment, and chance. But the rediscovery of subtle lunar and cosmic effects offers a scientific nod to the wisdom embedded in medieval horoscopes and fertility magic. For you, this intersection of ancient belief and modern inquiry is a powerful reminder that human understanding is always evolving. What was once dismissed as superstition might hold kernels of truth, hidden in plain sight, waiting for new tools and perspectives to uncover. As we approach the conclusion of this journey, keep in mind that the story of medieval horoscopes and fertility is not just about the past. It's a living, breathing saga that continues to influence how we think about life, destiny, and our place in the cosmos. Next up, the final section, where all these threads come together for the biggest, most surprising revelation of all. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. The world of medieval horoscopes and fertility was far more than simple superstition. It was a complex and highly guarded science wrapped in mystery, politics, and power plays. Imagine a time when the very question of whether a couple could conceive a child was entwined not just with their biology, but with the stars above, the phases of the moon, and secret knowledge held by a select few. At the heart of this system were astrologers who served not merely as stargazers, but as vital advisors to kings, queens, and nobles. Their horoscopes were not general daily musings, but detailed charts that predicted the likelihood of childbirth, the health of offspring, and even the potential destiny of the child in the cosmic order. These practitioners were trusted with secrets that could secure or destroy dynasties. The calculations themselves were intricate, blending observations of planetary alignments, lunar phases, and eclipses with local seasons, and even the humors of the body. It was an art and science demanding years of training, passed down in strict apprenticeship, and guarded against outsiders. Yet, despite the sophistication, this knowledge was deeply entangled with ritual and belief. Fertility was seen as a sacred force, governed by cosmic laws that had to be respected and appeased. Couples seeking to conceive often engaged in elaborate rituals, timed to favorable celestial moments, fasting prayers, offerings, and secret rites designed to open the womb to the influence of the stars. Women played a central but precarious role in this world. Midwives were not only caretakers, but also keepers of fertility wisdom, herbal remedies, and astrological timing. They were both revered and feared. Their knowledge, a powerful tool, yet a dangerous one in a society suspicious of women's power. The pressure to produce heirs was immense. Without a male child, kingdoms could fall into chaos. Lands could be claimed by rival houses, and entire bloodlines might vanish. Fertility, therefore, was a political and existential concern. And astrology became a weapon in this high-stakes game. But this secret knowledge was also a source of fear and suspicion. The Church condemned many of the practices as heretical or pagan, while rival factions sought to discredit or eliminate astrologers who threatened their power. Secret meetings, coded writings, and hidden rituals became necessary for survival. Behind the glittering courts and ornate cathedrals, a shadow network thrived. Whispers of curses, clandestine fertility rites, and cosmic manipulations swirled. In the dark corners of castles and villages alike, this world was not static. As the centuries passed, the knowledge adapted, absorbed new influences, and spread through Europe in subtle ways, influencing everything from folk medicine to emerging scientific thought. The echoes of this complex system persist, even now, in our fascination with astrology, fertility planning, and the rituals we still use to mark birth and destiny. But there is much more beneath the surface. Next, we'll delve into the forbidden rituals and secret societies that preserved and protected this knowledge. Rituals so potent, they were feared by all but the initiated.